I don't view any abortion as fatality-free because the baby is dying.
Why do you think that your faith should dictate the law?
I believe that every child has an opportunity to be something.
How can you tell me how to take care of my body when you don't have my body?
It's the same message today. Give up your sin and give it to Jesus Christ. Or will you be condemned to hell for your sin? Will you be condemned to hell?
There's a lot of Jesus people out today. God bless them.
Okay, come on in. Mary Ashton, JC, and then Hart, and then Kara, and then Sarah on the far end. Most important thing for me is that you guys are comfortable, that everyone's respecting one another. If we could just start maybe just with your name, your age, and just a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I am a senior literary arts student at the Mississippi School of the Arts in Brookhaven. I turned 18 in January. I'm a writer.
I do have an all-time favorite book. It is Looking for Alaska by John Green.
Mostly a poet and really glad to be here today.
Hi, I'm Kara. I'm 17. I'm a junior at St. Andrew's Episcopal School. This is ASC, and I love her. And she's in Congress, and I want to be in Congress, and I just think she's great. I participate in debate as well as dance, and I plan on studying law.
My name is Hart. I'm a sophomore at Murrah High School. I really enjoy a lot of things, especially the arts, theater, debate. I do sports, track, swim. I really like to do everything.
Hey, my name is JC. I'm a sophomore at Clinton High School. I'm 15 and I play volleyball. We had a really good year that year.
My name is Thomas. I'm a junior at St. Joseph Catholic High School. I'm 17.
If I don't do my hair when it's still wet, it doesn't move.
I'm on the sailing team, and I am a huge Star Wars nerd. I love Star Wars.
Hey, my name is Mary Ashton. I am 17, and I am not currently in school right now, but I work at Launch in Pearl, and yeah.
So you may not believe this, but we reached out to more than 500 teens in the Jackson area, and you were some of the only teens that agreed to sit down with us. Why do you think that is?
I feel like the reason that we don't get a lot of participation on this is because, especially here, we're an abstinence-only state. This is not something that we've ever been brought up to feel comfortable talking about, especially outside of our home. I know in the South, we're very like, what's in our house stays in our house. And just because controversy scares people, and a lot of people haven't been given the skills to have this type of conversation in a way that is productive.
I see you nodding. Thomas, does that resonate with you?
I think a lot of people are they're too scared to talk about things like this, especially in front of a lot of people.
JC?
The topic is just so judged here. It's not something that normal, or quote unquote normal households talk about. Like, it's very quiet and closeted and nobody talks about it, and it's very judged if you do talk about it. Even just talking about it.
Rounds total. It's gonna count for 90 seconds each round, and then there's gonna be a 30-second rest period.
How do you talk to JC about sex, and in particular safe sex? I understand sex ed isn't where it should be in this state.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry, this is awkward.
No, it's not. It's not awkward.
Okay.
It's not. We have a 3-point PowerPoint. No, I'm joking. No, we are very well aware that, since the dawn of time, that humans are going to have sex.
Yeah.
It's a part of life. Our goal is for JC only chooses to give herself to somebody that she truly cares for, you know, especially at such a young age. Not saying that we support it, but we're also realistic.
Do you consider yourselves anti-abortion rights or pro-life?
Pro-life in that if it were me or my children or the people that I'm close with that I know believe the same way we are, I'm going to encourage them. We will do whatever we have to do to help you. If you're not at a place that you can have this baby, we will help you see this baby to life and then find out what we're gonna do at that point.
We polarize it and we say pro-life, pro-choice, which one are you? But can we talk about, like, how are we truly helping these people as opposed to just saying you're either this or that?
Yeah.
Do you think other people should have the right to make their own decision?
Yes and no. Yes, I think we all should have a right to make whatever decision we want to make of any topic that there is. Like, whatever choices we make in life, like, once you're an adult, you should have the right to make that choice. Should I have the choice to kill JC right now because she's on my nerves or because she's not really convenient to me? No. I think there's a huge lack of information around other resources. Like, what are my other options? Like, you walk up to an abortion clinic and there's picketers, you know, and then this girl still feels like she has no choice, but now she only feels more guilt about the choice that she's going to make anyway, instead of somebody coming to her and saying, okay, like, here's some other resources, like, come with me, let's talk about it, and if you still want to do this next week, then I'm gonna love you regardless.
Raise your hand if you know someone who has had an abortion. Wow. Raise your hand if you know someone who considered an abortion but decided against it. Wow. I don't know why I'm surprised to see so many hands, but the truth is 1 in 4 women will have an abortion in her lifetime. Raise your hand if you know a teenager who's been pregnant. Everybody. So you may know this, but Mississippi has the highest rate of teen pregnancy compared to other states in the country. Did you all know that?
Yes.
Yeah, you did. I mean, it sounds like your life experience has represented that statistic. What is it like based on kind of the people that you've known to be pregnant while you're in high school?
Very judged. Yeah. Mississippi is definitely a place where whatever you do, it's going to be the wrong choice, depending on who you're talking to. And there's not really a middle ground that Mississippians can typically find.
As far as like the stigma and heavy judgment, from my experience, it's almost been normalized. And not to say that's a necessarily good or bad thing, but like I've seen where it happens where like guys I used to hang out with, they'll be like, yeah, I have a daughter now. And we're just kind of like, cool, that's nice, you know?
And you're talking about other 16-year-olds?
Yeah.
What do you think, JC?
I think it's a little bit of both, because people my age aren't like they're used to it, because you look left and right at my school and there's another girl pregnant.
Wow.
But then once you're out of school and you're just at home with your parents and grandparents and all the older generations, like they were saying, it's a lot more judgmental and some very harsh things can be said.
A lot of people say teenagers shouldn't have a voice in this debate. What do you all think about that? You know, should teenagers have a voice in this debate?
Absolutely. We're affected the most by this.
If you think about like who's more likely to have an unwanted pregnancy, it's gonna be a high schooler, right? Like who's gonna be in a situation in which they're really not prepared to have a child, either mentally, financially, whatever. Those are gonna be teenagers when you think about the bulk of them. And people like to say that they leave teenagers out of these types of conversations because we can't make decisions, but we can't make decisions because we're not provided with the tools to do so. So they criticize us for not knowing things, but then don't tell us things, which is really weird to me. But these are like my debate trophies. and over there, and up there. For this one, I got first. For this one, I got third.
Do you have another debate tournament coming up? I know you just had one.
I don't have another tournament until nationals.
Oh, okay. I'm Christian, and we live in a Christian household. And at one point, we go to church, and she would just be very nonchalant, like she wasn't paying attention. And her daddy, I said, Charles, I really need to talk to you about something serious. I said, I don't think that Kara believes in God.
Stay.
And I said, in all of my life, if I can't display
Come here.
that God is real through my life into my household, how can I convince others? How am I a good disciple? How am I a good example of a Christian if I can't even convince my own child? And I said, so that really worries me. He said, Karen, that girl believes in God. She just wants to debate you.
Kara, I know you've been unhappy with the sex ed that you've received. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
You even wrote your state rep about it, right?
Yeah, I did.
And what did you say?
I basically just talked about how I think that it's counterproductive that we say if we don't talk to teenagers about sex, then they won't have sex. But then, or I guess the word I was looking for is ironic. So if we don't talk to teenagers about sex, they won't have sex. And then we have the highest teen pregnancy rate. Like, I feel like if you look at that correlation, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that that's not working. And if you don't teach them how to do that safely, I know people who think you can't get pregnant the first time you have sex, or you can't get pregnant if you're on your period. And I definitely think that has to do with the fact that our education system constantly fails us in many different areas.
JC, you're on a different side of the debate than Kara, but I think you guys have similar views when it comes to sex ed.
I am pro-life, but I will not judge anybody for their views or anybody for what they decide to do, because that's where all of these issues start, is judgment.
What do you think schools could do better?
I think schools especially could have a lot better sex education program, because I got a pamphlet in the 6th grade. Like, that's it.
It was just this is a vagina, this is a penis,
exactly.
End of story.
End of story, nothing. And I think that if we were more informed on having at least safe sex and not them just telling us don't have sex, because that's all they tell us. They don't tell us how to have safe sex or what happens if I do get pregnant or who's going to be there if I do get pregnant. It's always, you're not going to get pregnant because you're not going to have sex.
You mentioned you're pro-life. I assume you would not choose to terminate a pregnancy. Do you think that other people should be able to make their own decision, or do you think abortion should be outlawed?
That's a really difficult question for me, because in certain situations, I can completely understand them considering having an abortion, but at the end of the day, I believe that every child has an opportunity to be something, even though their parents could be not good people and they could not have the best circumstance.
Right now in the state of Mississippi, there's a law that says parents have to give their consent for a minor to terminate their pregnancy. Do you think that law should be in effect here?
I think so. I think you need parental consent to get your ears pierced. Unless you are 18 years old, you can get your own. And I think most definitely if we have that, you should need to get their consent for something as major and possibly dangerous as that.
Absolutely not. I think that even if you're a parent, the only person who knows what's best for someone in that type of situation is the person who's in the situation. There's no way I would have a child right now, at all. And for that to be a decision that someone else has to make for me, it to me sounds crazy.
And what do you say to people who, like Thomas, say you're not old enough, you're not mature enough to make that type of decision?
If I'm not mature enough to make a decision to have a child, I'm definitely not mature enough to have one.
Who taught you about abortion? Mary Ashton, do you want to start?
My mom did. Mom's experience was traumatizing because she went through a pregnancy at 16 and she had an abortion at 16. And she said that it took a very bad impact on her because she thinks about it 24/7 and, she wished she shouldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where the skillet is. Where's your skillet, Grandma?
I see one.
We only have one egg. Grandma, do you want an egg?
No, you can fix that for somebody else. I just put mine on a piece of toast.
Ashton, do you want an egg?
No.
This is total Southern cooking right here in grease that you cook the bacon with. It's a heart attack waiting to happen. That's how we roll around here. My family has had teen pregnancies since my grandmother. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 generations. And I prayed all the time for my children at 16 not to have children at 16. Like, God, please just take away this generational curse, because that's what I feel like it's been. And I wanted it to end with me, and it has.
When you were in school, do you feel like you got a strong sexual education? Did you have a class on sex ed that taught you about how you get pregnant, what contraception is, about abortion?
No, I didn't get one. I didn't have sex education there, anything like that.
Do you feel like, people your age in Mississippi have access to contraception that they can afford?
What does that mean?
Do you know what contraception is? No. So contraception is like birth control pills or a condom or an IUD, which is something that like a woman can have inserted that prevents pregnancy. So these are all things that people use so they don't become pregnant. Have you heard of those options?
Well, not a lot of people use condoms now. It's more like you get pregnant,
When you learned that you were pregnant, how did that affect you? What did you do?
It just didn't seem real. I was kind of panicking because of school, how young I was. Like, what am I going to be when I grow up? If I'm 16 and I have a child, and how am I going to go to college? How am I going to make a living? All these things run through your mind. I decided to have an abortion because I didn't know what else to do.
Do you regret your decision?
I've regretted it every day for 30 years. There's no way I would want anybody to go through the mental things that I've had to go through because of having an abortion.
When you went to terminate your pregnancy, what was that experience like?
It was horrible because they had people that were protesting when I went in. And then I was sitting there thinking, I can't believe these people are doing this and acting this way, because they're not going to be with me when I leave here. They're not going to help me raise my child. It just made me feel like a killer, but that's what I am.
Does anyone have a response to Mary Ashton's story or anything you want to say?
Do you feel like some of I don't even know if guilt is the word, but I guess the negative feelings associated with that experience that your mom felt, do you think that was the result of indoctrination or being kind of conditioned to feel a certain way regarding abortion?
Yes.
Do you usually do a scripture?
Sometimes.
Okay.
That's why he was like, we doing this? Yeah.
Sometimes it's so hungry to forget.
Oh, that's what it is. You put the cups on the table? That was kind of you. Okay. Want to say grace?
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you this day. We ask that you bless this food, bless the conversation, that it all be nourishing to our bodies and minds. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I know it.
That's like a conversation not everybody has with their kids, but it's obviously an important one. Mm-hmm. But it seems like you guys don't shy away from those conversations.
No, not at all. There isn't a tough conversation. We just kind of go at it because I really want to know what their thoughts are,
Do you think if people knew their options in terms of contraception, they would use it more, that the teen pregnancy rate would go down?
Well, that's a tough one for me because I understand the importance of education or sex education, and I think that's very important, and I feel like that would decrease a lot of the issues we see. But I also feel like the stigma, especially in Mississippi being kind of the Bible Belt, surrounding that also may lead to some of the problems. When people kind of feel repressed about certain things, they don't feel comfortable going to their parents and just saying, I want to get on birth control. Most people don't feel comfortable doing things like that. Even though there is an educational aspect to it that's important, I feel like there's also a social aspect to it that may not be as concrete or that may not be as easy to change.
Thomas and Hart, you're on opposite sides of this debate, but you're both Christian. And I'm interested to know what role you think faith and religion should or shouldn't have in this conversation.
I am pro-choice, and I feel like my faith has actually influenced that in certain ways. And it's kind of ironic almost. When I was growing up in like Bible study and Sunday school, they taught us the basics of Christianity. Love one another, love your neighbor. As the themes started to get more mature, then there became like these differing opinions on it. Especially when it comes to like sex. It suddenly became a little more like repressed almost and judgmental. I've tried to keep that same idea that it's important to love your neighbor because that's what Jesus would have wanted. It's important to recognize, of course, the value in every life.
Thomas?
I definitely agree. The Bible is very clear not to judge people. And when Jesus is asked what is the most important commandment, he says, love God, your neighbor, and yourself. I think it almost comes down to you don't want to judge people or control people the way they live their life to the extent that you're not letting other people be harmed. And I would say that because of the child, somebody is being harmed. So I would say that's where it stops.
What are the conversations like that you have with Thomas?
Very open. I mean, Thomas is a very open, sweet child. Ever since, his dad left, he's very very sensitive, very open. We can talk about anything, really. Everybody's kind of up in there. I'm upstairs, they're down here getting ready. About this time, we kind of come down, everybody's just grabbing and eating and getting shoes on, gym clothes, all the supplies for the day.
How do your Christian beliefs inform your views on abortion?
Just black and white, thou shalt not kill. And so when we believe as a nation, thou shalt not kill, and you hear the argument of, well, what if that child, now they have no chance, they're getting born into a bad situation? Well, I mean, do we just go into the bad neighborhoods and take out all the kids that have a bad life and kill them too?
Especially in the context of, we've been talking about abortion, what does right from wrong mean for you?
I would say that follows the Bible for me. That's what I'm saying. America's built on biblical principles, but no one talks about it. Where do we get the idea of right and wrong? Where does the idea of right and wrong come from? Where do our laws come from? Don't steal, don't kill, and the rules and the laws that we have. I'm not perfect, in no way, but we try as best as we can to adhere as a parent and to get your children to have those same kinds of goals.
When do you believe life starts?
As soon as conception.
And so do you feel like a woman's body is no longer her body?
A woman she's got her own body and she's got a body of another person inside of her. There are two bodies. So if you killed a pregnant woman, that's a double homicide.
When it comes to outlawing abortion, are there any exceptions for you?
No exceptions at all.
Rape, incest?
No. Like I said to you before, two wrongs don't make a right.
We've all been talking about a lot of unplanned pregnancies in your lives. You're seeing it in high school, you're seeing it among your peers. Is contraception available to people your age in Mississippi? Can people afford it? Do they have access?
Absolutely not. If you're under 18, you have to have a parent's permission to be put on birth control. Essentially, the only thing available to us is condoms. And we all know how effective those are when used improperly by people who aren't being taught how to use them because of the lack of sex education.
JC, when you talk about your high school and there's like teen moms left and right, why aren't people on birth control or using condoms?
I personally don't know if they are or not, but nobody talks about it until it happens. I mean, nobody talks about sex until you're pregnant, and then you're like, oh, shoot.
I think people are living in, delusion. That's the best thing I can describe it as. I think you're living in a delusional world if you think that every teen in Mississippi isn't having sex. God isn't coming to everybody and giving them a Messiah. People are having sex. That are just the facts.
So abortion was made legal in our country in 1973. The case, which you might recognize, was Roe v. Wade. That case may be overturned this coming June. The Supreme Court is going to rule on it. The case that they're going to rule on is called Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, which is, I think, 5-6 miles from here. So this could be a massive change in our country. 26 states are likely or certain to attempt to outlaw abortion if this case is overturned. What do you think will happen if this case is overturned, in which case Mississippi would automatically outlaw abortion?
I always say that abortion laws don't stop abortion, they stop safe abortions. People who are in a position in which they can't have a child are not gonna have a child, whether the government says that they should or not. And the ways for people to terminate pregnancies on their own is not gonna save lives, it's gonna cost more lives. We still have back alley doctors who are not certified, who don't use sterile equipment, who don't know how to perform these things safely and correctly.
I don't think it would happen on that scale, that is like back alley stuff. And my counter to that is I don't view any abortion as fatality free because the baby is dying. So I would say, I don't think it would, I think it would save more lives than it would hurt.
Like, I agree with Tommy that it is a life that you're aborting, but then at the same time, if it's illegal to get an abortion, then people are still gonna do it, but they're not gonna do it safely.
So in 2019, 74% of the people who got an abortion in Mississippi were Black women. Maternal mortality rate, Black women are nearly 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications. I wonder if you had heard those things before coming here tonight.
I definitely knew the abortion rates. The maternal mortality rate, I think I've heard, I didn't know it was that high.
Mm-hmm. Does it make you sort of reconsider any of your opinions?
I mean, it's a terrible thing, obviously, but I would still go back to abortion for me as 100% mortality rate unless something goes wrong and the baby isn't killed. But for me, because the baby is always killed, it has a 100% mortality rate already.
So I think this brings up a central question in this debate, which is whose life should be prioritized? Is it the mother's or is it the unborn?
You know, obviously I'm not a mother, so I can't say like, this is what you have to do. You need to die for your child. So I would say the child's life should be prioritized on a moral and religious basis, but if the mother's life is threatened, I think there's more to it there than in general.
The maternal mortality rate is the number of women who die within 42 days of either giving birth or the pregnancy ending because of complications. Mississippi has one of the highest rates in the country of maternal mortality. The reason that's a big part of this conversation is because there are women who feel like they don't have access to abortion, but they're at a higher risk of dying by going through that pregnancy, so that they feel that laws that force them to go through with a pregnancy threaten their lives.
In that case, I would prioritize the life of a child because, well, the mortality rate is higher. There's still a much higher percentage for them to live than the almost guaranteed, again, unless something goes wrong, for the child to die if the abortion happens.
I think in terms of life, livelihood, and legality, setting aside every moral thought on abortion, the moment you introduce the law into what medical procedures can be performed or not, you introduce this whole spectrum of issues that it causes, because if you say, okay, well, we'll make abortion illegal in cases of rape or incest, how do you determine how that came about? Do you have to bring up a court case? Do you have to win that court case? By the time that court case is won or lost, how far along is that pregnancy?
I indirectly write about many things, but the most relevant to reproductive rights is my article with Global Comment called How to Effectively Advocate for Life. And it does not say whether I'm pro-choice or pro-life. It does not say my stance. All it says is, if you do believe that abortion should be illegal, then do all of these other things that are in favor of life and the quality of life. Be anti-death penalty. If you're going to be pro-life, you should be anti-death. That is directly oppositional. It's really important for me to not point out flaws in somebody else's argument, but understand where they're coming from and understand that we have mutual ground no matter where we stand is always the first step.
Raise your hand if you think life starts when the baby is born. Raise your hand if you think life starts at conception. Raise your hand if you think life starts when there's a heartbeat.
I think life starts when there is a heartbeat, but before that, then it's not, because I don't consider the fetus a life, right? I don't think we can prioritize a life that's not actually a life yet, right? Like, I think there should definitely be restrictions on how far along the pregnancy is. Like, I don't think you should be able to be 9 months pregnant and then have an abortion, right? But to the point where it's a clump of cells that has no feeling whatsoever, to harm a living, breathing, sentient, feeling human being for potential just doesn't make sense to me at all. I feel like sometimes we talk about this as if the child's feelings are gonna be hurt. So like, people are like, how would you feel if your mom aborted you? I wouldn't feel any kind of way, because I wouldn't know what happened and I wouldn't be here.
So I'm noticing that we're all using different terms: unborn, fetus, embryo, baby, child. This country is in a really strange place where, you know, on certain issues, we have these sort of like dual realities based on what information, you know, which side is receiving. So I guess I wanted to throw it out to you. What do you think is the most appropriate terminology to be using in this conversation? JC?
I think it's a child or a baby, because that's what it is. And that's how I view it, so.
Same here. I don't make the distinction like they were saying. I don't know all the different times. So I don't make the distinction between, well, it's a fetus, no, it's a baby. I just call it a baby.
I meant to say this before, but it's kind of interesting to say this after. 90% of abortions happen before 12 weeks. So we're talking about, you know, 2 inches big, the size of a plum is how big we're talking. Before 8 weeks, that's 66% of abortions. And we're talking about a kidney being this big. So, you know, when people have the abortion that early, like oftentimes before 8 weeks, it's like menstruation, it's blood. Does that change anyone's opinion of the terminology they're using?
I just think that using the word baby can be very dangerous. In terms of influencing people's minds, I think the idea of passing a kidney bean is something you can get a lot more in line with than pulling arms and legs out of your uterus. Using the word baby can be used in a way that is manipulative and harmful.
I think it absolutely does have an emotional charge to it. I think that's why a lot of people use it. I mean, obviously, if you're saying a kidney bean, it has a lot less emotional weight than a baby does. So whether you consider it harmful or not, there is definitely an emotional connection if you use baby when you say it. There's a lot of crisis pregnancy centers, and that's their entire job. So a lot of them obviously would use the term baby. They're trying to convince people not to have an abortion.
Even though it's the size of a kidney bean, we were the size of a kidney bean at one point. It's still a human.
I just want everyone to have a moment to kind of explain their perspective and their stance and where they are. Who wants to start on this side? Thomas?
The most important thing to me is my faith. And I think, like he was saying, it does say you should love your neighbor, but I think loving your neighbor means not letting stuff like that happen.
I agree with that, because I'm a Christian too.
I am pro-choice because even when looking at arguments against abortion, right, they're the same as what they said: religion, personal experience. You can't make laws based off of religion and personal experience, right? Everybody doesn't follow the same religion. So if you follow that religion, that's a rule that you can apply to yourself, but you can't apply that to somebody else who doesn't believe that, right?
Okay, so I actually have a question.
Yes.
Why do you think that your faith should dictate the law?
So the law currently stands, according to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is that there is a freedom to whatever religion you choose. But you can't make a law saying what someone has to believe. You absolutely make every law on what you believe. That's how everyone chooses what they believe. I believe because of my faith, yes, but that's still one of my beliefs. I'm not legally making someone else believe that. I'm passing a law based on my beliefs.
But you
That's
are.
my distinction.
Sarah, why don't you give us your position and any other sort of response that you want to give?
So I am pro-choice. I believe that every pregnant person should have the decision on whether or not they should be able to terminate a pregnancy. I would very much rather somebody terminate a pregnancy than somebody raise a child that they don't want and have that child grow up unwanted, or if we're talking about Mississippi, in the foster care system, which is severely undervalued, underfunded, and overutilized.
The reason we have so many abortions, or one of the reasons, is because people feel like they don't have the resources to take care of the baby. And I feel like if we had someone to give people those resources, then there wouldn't be as many, and there wouldn't be just that quick thought, oh, I need to get an abortion because I can't take care of this baby. But it is because we live in Mississippi, it's very poor, and we don't have those resources to be able to take care of that baby.
Do you think that abortion should be outlawed before those resources are available?
Those resources should come first. I think that if we had those resources, that choice on the pro-choice side would be more towards keeping the baby because you have those resources and because you have the education that you need, and the baby could have a chance.
So I want to get personal for a second. Nobody has to answer. If you faced an unwanted pregnancy tomorrow, let's say, and for the guys, if your partner did, what would you do?
Well, I know the first thing I would do is obviously consult my partner, and I guess I'd say get on the same page as them as far as understanding how we want to go forward with it, because obviously it's their body that has to endure all the effects.
I always say I never want to have kids, and the reason is I don't want to die having a child, right? So one, I'm already a Black woman who's more likely to die, and personally, my life over something that's not there yet, I'm always gonna choose me. So I think that would be a decision that would be really hard for me. I think that making the decision to kill my child or potential child would be something that would be very hard for me, and I don't know if it would be one that I will be able to make. But because I know that I could barely make the decision for myself, I know I definitely can't make it for other people.
I think what you're talking about, Kara, is really important, just that nuance, because a lot of times when people hear like pro-choice or pro-abortion rights, they think like automatic abortion, and that's not, right? It's just you feeling like you should have a decision, and that's one of your options.
And like for a long time, this was my phrase, I'm pro-life for myself, but pro-choice for other people. But then as I kind of educated myself, that means I'm pro-choice, right? Because a choice that I would make is to keep my child. But I think there should still be a choice for others. So she was saying earlier, like, that's what she thinks, but she wouldn't judge anybody else for doing that, which to me sounds very pro-choice, but I'm not gonna tell anybody what they believe, right?
I mean, does that resonate with you, JC?
Yeah, a little bit.
I think there's this idea that if you're pro-choice, you're pro-abortion, which for me is definitely not the case.
Thomas, I wonder, do you think the boy or man in the situation should have an opinion?
If you have to pay for the kid if it's born, you should get to have a say, I think, in whether it lives or not.
Well, not just the money, like it's equally his kid than it is the mother's. Even though she's going through 9 months of pregnancy, it's still that father's child. And if she doesn't want the baby and the father does, I feel like she should have the baby and give rights to the father.
If we look at like the people trying to enact these laws or trying to repeal these laws or whatever, it's mostly men, mostly white men. We see men are constantly making these decisions about how women are handling things with their bodies. Regardless of what you think about it, at the end of the day, as a man, especially as a cis man, that's not something I'm gonna have to go through. So all I can really do is listen to people who have to go through that situation, listen to their experiences and understand it. And I feel like if we had more of that from a lot of these lawmakers, then even if they may continue to be pro-life or they may continue to be pro-choice, whatever their opinion is, it'll at least be more informed than it was before.
Like, if this is not something that affects your life, how can you make laws about it? How can you tell me how to take care of my body when you don't have my body?
Have any of your thoughts on any of this changed throughout this discussion?
It's kind of like I'm in the middle. I'm like pro-life and pro-choice because I used to think like pro-choice was like abortion. Like, that's what I used to think. But now that I've heard, you know, them talk about it, I understand that it's not just aborting a child.
At first, I consider myself pro-choice up until a heartbeat is detected. But now that I've heard like Kiera speak about it, I'm starting to rethink that and say, regardless of these certain things, it's still in the best interest to protect the woman, knowing that it can lead to these effects that I didn't even know. Like, of course I knew they existed, but I didn't know how extreme they were, especially affecting Black women. My eyes have been open to that.
I wouldn't say that my position changed, but I definitely think that my view of the other position has changed. I never thought that people who were pro-life were just like evil people who wanted people to suffer. But listening to the emotional aspect or the lived perspective of people who were affected by this, it does allow you to view people who have different views differently.
I think I absolutely agree with what I just said. I don't think any of my beliefs have changed, but my perspective of the opposition has changed. I guess I never realized to the extent that pro-choice people might not think abortion is a good thing, but that you shouldn't be able to control what other people can do. I think I didn't realize the extent of the people who believe or think that way.
I didn't switch sides or anything, but like it's very good to know their perspective on it. And the whole thing about saying you're pro-choice isn't saying you're pro-abortion. That had an impact on me.
Teenagers famously listen to other teenagers. So if you have a panelist full of teenagers who are talking about this issue and how it affects them, other teenagers are more inclined to say, oh, well, this is how it can affect me. I am in the boat of my perspective has changed, but my beliefs have not. And I think that's pretty universal, I think.
I think everybody at the end has the same goal. We just have different ways of getting there in what we think is best.
If you want to put it concretely, the goal of pro-choice versus pro-life is always going to be to reduce the amount of abortions that are performed every year. Some people think that should be through making it illegal, and some people think that that should be done through comprehensive sex education and access to contraceptives. Regardless, nobody wants abortion to happen, but it's a fact of life.
I'm Michael Learmonth, editor-in-chief of Vice News. Too often, traditional news outlets shy away from the real stories and experiences of those living through global conflicts. Not Vice News. Our reporters are on the ground, fearlessly covering the human stories that shape our world. You and millions of others can continue to read, watch, and listen to Vice News for free. But we hope you'll consider making a one-time or ongoing contribution of any size at vice.com/contribute. Every contribution, no matter how big or small, helps support the journalism Vice News brings to you every day. Thank you.